out of powerlessness. When you suddenly feel there is no need for you, there are no needs for the skills of the traditional macho man, and he's bored, then why not just go all the way out? All right, I'll wear a dress. And she says, all right, I'll dress up like a truck driver.
We've been dressing our little girls up in boys' clothes for a long time, but as the rock group The Kinks sing in their song Lola, girls will be boys and boys will be girls. It's a mixed up, muddled up, shook up world. These children are dressing like the rock star, Boy George.
I don't think it'll ever be normal to look like me, you know, to be as extreme as I am, but I definitely think that's kind of a statement of our times. I think it will happen.
We'll hear more from Boy George later, but first, John Nesbitt, the author of Megatrends. Mr. Nesbitt, you have said that androgyny is the 11th megatrend. What did you mean?
Well, I think that I would revise that somewhat, because what's really happening is that after hundreds of years, or how many it's been, of a society that's been run by machismo, patriarchal values, what's happening and been happening is that we're seeking a balance between masculine roles and feminine roles, and masculine values and feminine values. This will be a very long time unfolding. Now, Michael Jackson is adorable, but he is not the direction America is going. In order to be heard, in order to stand out, you have to be increasingly outrageous. And so we see this. Who's forgotten Alice Cooper? I mean, this comes up as we look to become more and more outrageous, to stand out above the crowd. But what's happening in America in connection with this is a seeking of a balance of roles. And the expressions of this are all over, and it's awkward, it's painful, it's confusing at times, but it's probably the most important thing that's going on this century in America.
Is that you're talking about happening as much in the middle of Kansas as it is in the cities? Is it all across the country?
It's more of an age difference, I think, than geographical, although in this society the difference geographical are very pronounced.
It's more in the north and the south, more in the cities than the towns?
It's mostly it's mostly in the east and the west.
Where femaleness is more acceptable, or?
Well, the working out of what the new roles are is more acceptable, and that's what we're in. We haven't decided yet. We haven't decided. We're in a long process of working out what the balance is going to be. Not the new balance, because there was never a balance before, but working out what the balance will be between masculine values and feminine values, and masculine roles and feminine roles.
Why is this happening now?
Well, it's happening partly because we busted out of the old stereotypes during the 60s of all kinds. And that was true of coming out of the closet, too, in all kinds of ways. But, you know, if you look around you, not only are women majority in our colleges and universities today, but in the very best law schools, and our very best medical schools, our very best architectural schools, women are a majority of the students. And this is going to have a tremendous impact. And this, too, is part of the working out of the new roles and the new relationships.
Joining us now in this discussion are Benjamin DeMott, professor of English at Amherst College, and the Reverend Jerry Falwell of the Moral Majority. Reverend Falwell, do you think this trend is good or bad for society?
Well, first I would say I agree with John that there is a trend towards outrageousness in the entertainment world. I don't think there's a great deal of connection between Boy George, Michael Jackson, and the move towards the genderless society as far as a unisexual development is concerned. If you ask point blank, do I think a genderless society is good or bad, I would say it's bad. I think it is a repudiation of God's creation. Many who today don't like to be men who are men, or women who don't like to be women, are angry with the way they have been made and are unwilling to accept themselves as the creation of God in God's image. And I think the very gospel of Christ, his death, burial, resurrection, and the desire of Christ to merge with his people in that relationship called regeneration is pictured on earth by the simile of the church, the husband-wife, man-woman relationship. So I see a very deep problem there spiritually for the long haul. But I'm not frightened by what is happening today, because like Tiny Tim and a host of other relics, and I don't mean that in a negative way, that have long since left the scene and are forgotten. I see the Michael Jackson and the Boy George, and I've heard neither of them sing, so I have nothing for or against them. I understand they're fine young people, but they too, in my opinion, will disappear as one more fad, and there will be another attempt to go a little beyond that always.
But let me ask you about the trend toward women coming into positions of authority. Do you object to that?
Oh, not at all. If you look at Margaret Thatcher in England, she'd make an excellent president of the United States, and she'd get my vote. And I look at the Liz Doles and the Jean Kirkpatricks in our society today. Our problem is not with what NOW is saying about a woman for vice president. Our problem is having one of them for vice president. You know what I mean? People and every woman should have the right to be and do anything in her heart that any man can do that is within her biological capabilities. But as long as men haven't learned to have children and women haven't learned to play NFL football, there'll always be a difference.
Benjamin DeMott, why do you think our young people are so attracted to these rock stars who are confusing us about which sex they are?
You have to say about Boy George that he does offer a very sharp contrast with a good number of previous rock stars whose nature was threatening. They were people who always came out with such force and with such threat and menace and hint of violence in them that a young kid, a young girl particularly, 13, 14, could hardly perceive such a person as cuddly or nice, friendly, or anything of the sort. It's very hard to see Boy George as threatening. He prances about, he's happy, he's sunny, and he looks nice.
But let me ask you all about how we can have a movement toward more acceptance of femaleness in our society, and our rock stars, the men at least, dressing as women, and have Ronald Reagan in the White House, who talks tough to the Russians, and our presidential candidates, Gary Hart, specifically chopping wood and riding on a horse. Which is the trend, John Nesbitt?
This is all a part of working it out. I mean, it's not that we were having a macho patriarchal society one morning, and the next morning we're going to have a balance between the values and the roles of the sexes. It's a very difficult period, and I think part of the popularity of someone like Boy George is sort of a comfortable place to identify and hide. You know, we're going through this just basic period of change in our society, and that's why Jerry's doing so well, because there's so many people who need to identify with a fundamentalist religious group. They need structure. They need something to hold on to, and it's very, very comforting. And that's why we see such a religious revival in this country today, because we are in a period of change. So it's going to be very lurching and painful, and it's not either this or that. It's a great, incredible dynamic that's occurring, and you'll see contradictions all over the place.
I can't believe that sorry to harp on the same point, but it doesn't seem to me that this dynamic is that great and that difficult to place. It seems to me that what we have had in history for a long period is a steadily increasing democratization of education. We have more and more people capable of thinking and of imagining possibility in their lives, and yet we still have a society that's organized in tracks, so that the people are placed very early on in life in positions which are more or less, depending on where they're placed, are susceptible to possibility or offering creative opportunities to people. And that's the situation, as I understand the situation.
But in this context, the great leap came after the war, when we had the tremendous increase of women in the workforce. I think that's the basic change, and that's increasing tremendously, with particularly the young women, with almost all of them working.
You can put it your way. I want to come back at you and say the extraordinary development in our culture after the war was the democratization of education, of higher education.
The only negative I see is that in Boy George, Michael Jackson, and many others who are portraying a femaleness from a male